was born ready.
All right, guys, we are back. This is the first one back after only week where we didn't produce an episode.
That break, yeah.
Actually,
I've been in Dubai and other places.
It was kind of funny though. I noticed that when we had started this whole thing, like before I moved here, before any of the thing, I remember we kind of assumed we were going to have to do this in like 10 episode seasons just because of traveling. You know, we kind of thought it was going to be tough to put together. So the fact that we got 20 episodes.
Is that how many we did?
19 actually. It was 19 without a single break.
Good, yeah.
So 19 weeks, 19 episodes.
You know that people don't care, right? They're going to be like, what do you guys do?
Guys, we're doing our best
here.
Yeah.
They're like, I'm in the car, I got nothing to do. Yeah.
Actually, it was funny though. This morning, I woke up to frantic messages from Julien of like lists of studies and all these other things to go through, and I think Kyla was taking pictures of you with your whiteboard.
Yes, well, there was some interesting, yeah.
Now, one of my favorite things about this happens, I would say, probably about once a month on average, where you'll like get a wild hair up your ass, and you're like, Tyler, dragging you in the rabbit hole, first thing.
Exactly.
Just like the
there's no foreplay on this one.
It's like when Julien says, you got 5 minutes for a call. What that means is you have 90 minutes for a call.
And it's going to be interesting.
Yes, but today you had messaged me a few things that were actually really, really lined up with what we wanted to talk about today.
Yes,
anyways,
which is Friston stuff.
Which is Karl Friston stuff. Without going into all of what his stuff is, because that's going to be the bulk of this episode.
The concept.
Yeah. But the guy himself is a... What is this? He was was it a neuroscientist or a neural imaging scientist?
He is a neuroscientist. He started as a psychiatrist.
Okay.
That's where he wanted to go, was the root of mental illness, schizophrenia, stuff like that. So that's what he wanted to fix, whatever you want to call it, to cure, was mental illness and everything. And he moved into more neuroscience. He's an excellent mathematician. As well.
One of the things that I had seen, I had some notes here from an article more on the guy than on his work, but was it like basically his neuroscience stuff now that he had done, is all of his brain imaging and all that stuff, is actually like his kind of like his hobby now, while he's driving really, really, really far forward now onto his free energy stuff.
And then he also is driving the field of artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
Which I don't even know that the people in the neuroscience understand the leaps forward made in the field of artificial intelligence because of him.
Yeah.
Like all the new stuff that we see coming up is a direct follow-up on his work. Yeah. That's why, like, it's not artificial intelligence anymore. It's basically artificial learning. That's where the Skynet is coming from, is artificial learning. And that's from his work. It goes so deep, it's insane.
There was so one of the things, Karl has these meetings. Do you know, where is he from? Where does he live?
London.
UK? Okay.
UK.
So he has these Monday meetings where I think like anybody can go and ask questions, right? And one of the things that happens, I guess what's interesting about this, he has everyone ask all their questions up front.
Yeah.
And then he just dives into all of them.
Yeah, and whatever I'm sure he wants to talk about. And half the crowd leaves halfway through because they're all so pissed.
They have no idea.
They don't get it. Yeah.
The other side of it too is, I think he says these meetings are at like 12:30 in the afternoon, and then he will not say a word all day until he's there. Like the first word he speaks out of his mouth is actually at the thing, which is crazy.
So he has an understanding with his wife and kids. He's a very interesting guy, let's put it this way, where they are not to talk to him that morning. At breakfast, they grunt and go, I mean, maybe they talk to him, but he does not answer back outside of grunts or stuff like that. I don't think anybody talks to him until he shows up. And it's not a meeting. It's more than that. He's in a what do you call it?
It's like a theater.
Because he teaches at the #1 college in London when it comes to neuroscience. He's the leading neuroscientist in the world.
Well, this was one of the notes I had, was 90% of papers that have been published on brain imaging use Friston's work.
Well,
Right?
yeah, and
He's cited as
yeah,
being
but he's cited in most of neuroscience. He's the leading neuroscientist. There's no
Yeah.
question. He's cited on everything. He's the Einstein of neuroscience. Or actually, I'm tempted to say Einstein was the Karl Friston of physics.
he's produced.
Maybe not, but like basically they are the same level. They come up with novel shit
Yeah.
like no one else.
They
ever.
said he's produced 1,000 papers
Papers.
since the year 2000.
By the way, a lot of it is
85
mathematics.
And
Yeah.
85 in the year 2017, which is like one every 4 days.
And you have to see the papers. It's like if people want to see, there's one, for example, in 2007 called Free Energy and the Brain. The concept is the most innovative stuff I've ever read since Schrödinger, What is Life?
Yeah.
Which is a direct continuation of Schrödinger's work. No, he's the most brilliant man. There's no such thing as brilliant man ever, but alive right now, there's no question.
Yeah.
Like, so in that theater where he's giving his lecture, because he's part of he's a fellow neuroscience, University of London, whatever it is. Like, there's a name for it, I just can't never remember. But if you look in that theater, you have, a third of them are all artificial intelligence people, the top in the world, so they understand what he's saying. Then you have neuroscientists, psychiatrists, you have people from the top minds in the world go there. And again, half of them leave the session saying, well, that makes no sense.
Yeah. The first few times you had mentioned like the subject, I could understand little pieces. You know, there's a concept that we'll get into a lot of, which is the prediction error thing. Fundamentally, I felt like I could figure that one out because you can almost directly apply most of it. A lot of the other stuff it's almost though that a lot of that math is for validation, or not validation, but to explain,
yeah,
right?
it's to explain.
And I get into that and I'm like, whatever this part is, I just don't need it. I'm moving on. I need to.
But you have to understand, no one understands Karl Friston.
Yeah.
Like it's one of the stuff, like that's why half of them leave the stuff so pissed because they're like, I don't understand what he's saying.
Yeah.
But I think they're liking where he starts. The finality versus causality, that's where free energy and the brain is about. And it's a direct continuation of Schrödinger's work. So we're going to get into that, but if you miss that part, it would be very hard to understand where it's coming from, I think.
Yeah, I agree. So where do we want to dive in at the very first into what the work is?
Yeah, well, the work is so he's a neuroscientist, right? Yep. But I think we have to start with very quick with the Schrödinger, what is life? Yes. Like I said, people don't understand. Schrödinger was a guy with a cat, but he came up with a wave function, which is the most successful theory ever produced in the sense of it was never proven wrong, right? He's the one who, the wave function is the probability of an electron to be in a certain place, whatever. Everything is based on probability. Welcome to quantum mechanics. This changed the world as we know it. There is no computer, there's no iPhone, there's no TV, LCD of any of that without the wave function, Schrödinger's wave function. So he's one of the Einstein of civilization, which most people don't know who he is outside of the cat thing.
Yeah.
But he's one of the greatest scientists ever. And he came up with a book in 1944 called What is Life, where he's trying to connect biology and quantum mechanics, saying like there is a deeper relationship that we understand with quantum mechanics, life, and stuff like that. And so that book generated the field of what is called now quantum biology, which is where we're all going. And in that book, he talks about causality versus finality. So causality, basically the idea was like you have two types of things. You have non-life and non-life. Non-life obeys the laws of causality, which is entropy always increases. We're going from order to disorder. Everything.
It's essentially just constant decomposition.
Basically. Yeah. And then so you start in an orderly state and you move toward disorderly. Everything decomposes, and at the end we're all dead. Right? If people like that, because it works 2 + 2, all of physics today is based on that, because it's non-alive and it's a linear progression from order to disorder, and that's Newton's laws of movement. For example, everything is based. That's where the math goes tack, 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 and people love that because it's a linear world without surprises.
Yeah.
Like you know where the Earth is going to be 6 months from now. And where it was 6 months ago, where it's going to be 6 months from now, there is no time element in that linear system. It's 2 + 2 = 4. Yeah? There's no complication. The world is simple. We invented everything. Everything is safe.
Yeah.
And that's basically the late 1800s, even actually up to 1920. This was the world we lived in. People don't understand, but in the late 1900s, someone said that everything that was worth inventing was invented. Because at the time, like you have to understand, like when Isaac Newton came up with the laws of movement, we thought physics was figured out. Few decimals out there. But up to the 6 decimals or whatever, we had figured out everything. And here comes first Einstein, right, who come up with E equals mc squared and all that stuff. And then we go into quantum mechanics. And quantum mechanics introduces the idea of probability. Like nothing is set.
And that's when we kind of come to the realization at that point, we just left this phase in which we have discovered all that there is to discover somewhat. Right. And to now it's like, oh, we don't actually know anything. Because
some of the stuff quantum mechanics was saying to this day are not possible. And yet they happen all the time.
Yeah.
It's stuff like entanglement, where two entangled particles, no matter what the distance is in between the two, are connected. That goes against everything we know. Like literally, if you take one particle, so particles spin in a certain direction, right? Just a crazy idea. Yeah. It's called entanglement. A particle spins either one way or the other. If particles are entangled, that means that one particle, if you don't know which way they spin until you look at it. That's quantum mechanics. Yep. I can't go into that one. But until you look at the particle, you don't know which way it spins. Once you look at a particle, let's say the one on the right spins left,
clockwise,
the other one will spin the other way. So clockwise, counterclockwise. Like it's like basically, I'm telling you, I have socks of different color. You don't know which foot, orange is on which foot, but the second my right foot is red.
As soon as I see one, I know what the
then
other
you know
one
what
is.
the other one is.
Yep.
Okay, it's the same idea, right? So then you take those socks and you put them at the opposite side of the galaxy, right? So I don't know which one is which, but the second I test one of those particles, because that's the only way to know which way it spins, then I know that the other one spins the other way.
Yeah, even though they're not physically attached or in any
exactly.
sort of physical relationship. Mm-hmm. That's quantum entanglement, I think is the term for that.
Exactly. And we don't know what that means, because there's a communication between the two that we cannot explain.
Now the interesting thing, I had actually just read a deal the other day where somebody had confirmed what they had is they had two separate systems of observation.
Yes.
And while they would observe at the exact same thing at the exact same time, each observer observed it in a different state. So not only can you have two separate things that are entangled, you can actually have the same thing.
And there was a problem because both testing was right. Both testings were right. So, but they basically came up with different answers. So both answers were right, even though they said the opposite thing on the same experiment. So, like the point is we don't know what it means.
Yeah.
That's welcome to quantum mechanics. We don't know.
But I don't know. I still think that's an important thing to carry over into almost everything else that we run into, is that you can observe two very separate things, and they can both be right for that moment. That you know what I mean. That
because
for you know what I mean.
The problem is the state. Is the state. But okay. So, but the idea was there was a probability. That's what Einstein didn't like about quantum mechanics, is the probability aspect, and that's why he famously said, "God does not play dice," because everything had a probability to it. Anyway, so quantum mechanics comes and basically changes physics. So basically now Newton's laws of movement are mostly right. That mostly, that's entropy always increases, or almost.
Most of the time.
Yeah, exactly. That changed the world. That changed physics completely, because then suddenly something that we knew, we had that very linear view of the universe. Everything is chemical, everything is that. And here come quantum mechanics, who basically change everything. So Schrödinger, after coming up with a wave function and the probabilities, applies this to biology. And it basically separates things in two groups. Non-life, who obeys the laws of basically Newton's laws of movement, as we go that way, yeah. And still on the quantum mechanical level is probability based, but then suddenly it says life obeys different rules. So everything goes from order to disorder. That's causality, but it seems life obeys finality, which is it's trying to fight the disorder. Life does everything it can to not let entropy go haywire, to not let entropy increase, because maximum entropy is a death of a system. Anything that goes to maximum entropy has no interaction with everything is dead. It doesn't move, there's no interaction, it's done. Which is where the universe, if we are right, will end up one day, right? So, but basically life fights that, does everything it can for entropy not to develop too much. Entropy is what is called also free energy. And that's where the work of Friston comes in, and he basically said he could quantify free energy. And that's his paper 207, for example, when he says free energy in the brain, where he explained that life, not just us, just life in general, is trying to limit the creation of entropy, free energy. How does he do that? By minimizing surprises. That a surprise creates entropy, creates disorder, creates free energy.
Yeah, it's something that it almost needs to be, you know what I mean? Like now it has to be quantified and it has to be put together. Otherwise,
so
it does just creates more chaos.
Yeah, exactly. And so his stuff was that's what. So from a neuroscientist perspective, that's what the human nervous system does. It's a learning machine that has one job, is to minimize surprises. Because if you minimize surprises, you minimize the creation of disorder. You minimize entropy, free energy, and you can stay alive more.
Mm-hmm. So my question is then, is an extreme on either side good in that department as far as what we look at what we're seeking for? So we're going to get into how we're going to make these predictions and the reduction of free energy for humans, for the way we think, the way we act, the way we learn. But is reducing free energy, even though that's something that life seeks, if we were to completely...
No, you can't do that
you
either.
Can't,
no,
right?
you can't. But that goes even further. What he did basically is that's our quantum mechanical moment for the study of life. The problem is, okay, so there was Isaac Newton, which was very linear movement, right? And then quantum mechanics comes and just changes physics.
Yeah.
Right, medicine did not have that. The medical world is on the same thing. Everything is chemical.
Yes.
Just like physics had Newton's laws, which everything is linear, you do this, you do A, you get B. Medical science was like that, with that empirical double-blind study. It was like, look, you do A, you cause B, you have causality, everything follows a linear pattern, and even though it's not true at all, that's basically what they wanted to get to, because it allows you to have a world that is simple to understand. That's humans for you right
Makes
there,
sense.
right? Yeah, exactly. That's human, because we all, the universe has no responsibility toward you to make sense.
Now this isn't seeking like a reduction in variables as though we're like crawling back into a cave necessarily.
No. So what he did, basically, what Friston did, is he introduced the idea of probability.
Okay.
Just like quantum mechanics said, well, everything is a probability. We know where the electron is going to be, maybe. But if I have enough of them, I can tell you what the probability of it being here versus there, right?
Yeah.
That's that what Einstein hated. That, yeah.
Mostly.
Over large enough numbers, we know on one, it can be anywhere. We don't know until we look. All right. So that was the same thing with Friston. Friston came about and said that. So the belief was that your neurons are basically at rest until they're being excited, being awakened by a stimulus from the outside. That creates a reaction into your brain, especially chemically, so electrical through neurons, creates a chemical reaction, and basically your body carries on. So that we are a passive reaction to whatever happens in the world. Yeah. Your neurons don't do shit. They're being stimulated by light or whatever. Then you react to it, and then you carry on with the reaction to what happened in the world.
Which is my total understanding of the way that things
work. Right. This is the Newton equivalent, the Newton laws of motion equivalent for medical world. That's how the brain works.
Yeah.
Right? A causes B.
Yeah.
It's a linear world that can go forward or backwards, that is simple to understand, and where A causes B, just like Newton laws. Like, the apple falls because gravity. Mm-hmm. Done. No. Right. So that's where we are in the medical world, right?
Yeah.
Quantum mechanics comes about and say, none of this is true with Newton's laws. It's far more complex. You're like, shit. It's mostly true. Newton's laws, like in most of what we do, is true, but the second you start to go at the very small, it's not true anymore. All right. So Friston comes about and says the same thing. Like, it's all about probabilities. So he introduced a quantum mechanical moment. So what does he say? He said that That's not true. Your neurons are not waiting for anything. They are constantly trying to predict the probability of an event. So what does it mean by that? An event is not based on the outcome. Your system is not trying to predict if the apple is going to fall. Your system is constantly trying to predict how it's going to feel when the apple falls. How you're going to feel about that whenever you see the apple falling. And so it's going to try to make a prediction based on that, the probability of this versus that. Like, oh, there's a 60% chance I won't like this when it happens. And then after that, it's going to match that prediction versus the actual sensation of the stuff. And if everything goes according to plan, it's great. If it doesn't, you have a prediction error, and then there are corrections that need to be made.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to talk about. But basically, he introduced the idea of probability. Like, your system is never passive. It doesn't wait for shit to happen, then reacts. On the contrary, it's very proactive and calculates the probability of something happening constantly. Something happening not being outcome-based, being how it's going to feel.
And that's an important thing, I think, is that, and that's where I had to get past the fact that I thought in the beginning that the prediction was about things like survive. It really is only trying to match a feeling. Because which is, I suppose, it's how you become in tune with reality.
You become in tune with reality through your peripheral nervous system, which is the only way we have to connect with the outside. So perception is reality. It's like, that's basically what he's showing with this, is to life, perception is reality. To something not alive, because it doesn't have perception, they have their reality. We have ours.
Totally separate reality.
Yes, because we can feel, and therefore we have our own quantum mechanical system based on probability of how is something going to feel like. And you are constantly anticipating the shit to happen next as a learning mechanism. So we are our own alpha zero, our own, like, that's what artificial intelligence is going toward. It's not mimicking human intelligence in a sense of consciousness. It's mimicking human behavior in the sense of learning. Mm-hmm. It's artificial intelligence is about learning like our nervous system learns, which is probability based of how something is going to feel.
There was so one of the examples that I'd come across was like, how did they word it? They said like the fear of pain is actually far greater than the feeling.
Because that's your probability.
Because, and especially once you've experienced, right? If I put my hand on something and just burn the shit out of it, that sucks. Yeah. But then when you go, if I were to go back again a week later,
you get close,
and I get close, I will almost need somebody to stuff my hand on that because it's an intense experience. Though at this moment, there's no fucking input.
No, but the probability of pain is so high. Yeah. Your system going into overdrive.
Because it is what you know from that. It's
so you always learn. So you always make a probability of what happens, and then you learn from what actually happens. Yeah. So there's two phases. There's the prediction, then there's the expression. You predict something, and then you're going to make an hypothesis, right? Yeah. And basically, you're going to confront that hypothesis with what the sensory input you get from the world outside. If they don't match, there's a problem. There's a correction. If they match, then you know for sure, and then you move on with that feeling. So that means that you're going to have to redo it constantly.
And before we go, that when it matches, that is what we would define as a reduction of free energy, right?
Yes.
That is exactly it.
It's about matching, not good and bad.
It's not good or bad. It's not. This is a thing that's beyond your control.
No, I like this or I don't. That's nothing to do. Did it match what I thought it was going to match? So I put my hand on the stove and I burn myself. Like you can see that with a kid. The next time they come, even if the stove is not on, you can't get the hand close to it because you know it's going to hurt. You're wrong, but it doesn't matter because at that moment, that's all that matters. I would have to force like this, and you go like, ah! So there's actually nothing.
That's why I can't get my dog in the fucking bathtub.
Yes. yeah, exactly.
Fuck it up one time.
And then it's done forever because he's incapable of recreating to change his prediction. So that's we're going to talk about that. So when there's a prediction error, then there are different ways of dealing with it. But you have to understand that once you're sure of a prediction, it's like that's how your system has learned, is moving forward with that. It's so hard to break because it matches. So if something hurts, you know that for a fact, it always hurts. Yeah. You don't like the taste of something, we're going to have to associate, and it takes a lot to break that.
I remember there was this was an old, I think this is some old like military interrogation thing, but they had actually said that electrocution was the thing that they had used because it's such a, I mean, like massively intense sort of pain. You know, it's over your
it
whole
is.
body. It's not like
I never tried, but I'm sure it is. Yeah. Well, I did stuff my fingers in the outlet a few times to see.
I've had a few moments working as a technician where I got lit up real bad, and one of them to where like I almost didn't crawl out of the fucking situation. But so I know what that feels like, and it feels really, 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 really bad. Obviously, but they said when they would test it, when they would like to torture people, one of the reasons they would use electrocution is because it sucks so much, but they actually barely have to use it on you. Meaning they hit you a couple times, and then all they have to do is threaten because you're like, no.
You come with it.
It's massive. The urge to get away from it.
And this is important because that's the nature of chronic pain.
Yes. Yeah.
Where you don't need the stuff anymore. It already hurts. That you see that with people, I can't get away from pain anymore because that's the problem, is that prediction is true now and constantly active.
Maybe this would be, this might be a good opportunity to use that as an example, like a specific example for this. Let's go down the chronic pain route.
Yep.
Because I think a lot of people will understand that. So let's say I deadlift. And I have a thing, let's just say it's a physical thing. It's this at this point it's not mental, right? And I don't stay tight, things shift a little bit, and a disc gets a little wonky, and now all of a sudden my back hurts a lot. I'm gonna start walking around now, and I'm gonna start to relate certain movement patterns or positions that are gonna cause pain while it's reasonable at that point. I have an injury. So I bend over, fuck, that hurts. A couple of days pass. Everything I do where I try to bend.
Yeah, exactly. And the problem with this is you bend over and it hurts. That's not the problem. The problem is you go, ooh, I felt something and now I'm fucked for 3 days.
Yeah.
The next time you feel something.
Anything.
Now you freak out because you're like, last time I got fucked for 3 days. There's no greater fear than that one. Going like, oh, I fucked my back up.
And this is when in training you'll often see somebody who will come in and they'll say, okay, I'm ready to start going, but I'm not going to deadlift. And that's when you do things.
That's not how they say it. They say, I'm not going to deadlift. They must breathe, and they're like, I can't do it. Like, that's when you see the fucking thing, because they have learned that once they go clock, it's 3 days. It's a 3 days of a fucking nightmare. And that we're going back to electrocution. That's the same principle.
And so what happens is they will still end up making, because we say that the fear of pain is much greater than the pain, that learning. We have already done the learning. The prediction has matched at that moment.
So now they know.
So what I see that's always interesting, is some of these other parallels that still fit, right? So one of the ways, like Dr. Stu McGill does some things with back injuries, is he's like, well, do what you can that does not hurt.
Yeah.
Whatever that is, do that. If that's walking and wiggling your arms, if it's carrying weights, start there. But very often you'll still see people, once they get back, a little bit of things.
That first session,
that first few, and the problem is over the course of a rehab, they don't expect that there's going to be setbacks, and there always are. Right? You're going to get stronger. You're going to move poorly once.
Or even if they reduce the setbacks because they do barely anything, right? They go like, oh, you're fine. But the problem is the second you go back into the position, the problem that caused the issue in the first place, which is you relax when you move. None of that is fixed, and so. All you got to do is go into a deadlift position and not feel comfortable, and then you're not deadlifting.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And
the bar is not coming off the floor.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. But that's how you end up with, and that's why from an imaging standpoint, they always say that you can't tell someone who's in pain and someone that's not, because a lot of it is going to be what they've done over the course of the actions that they've taken since then to allow them to not have this really negative prediction associated with this position.
And by the way, that's part of the issue, because that's when doctors will do an MRI, and if you have bulging disc, say you have a bulging disc.
Yep. Now you are this now.
Yeah, even though the bulging disc might not be where the pain or cause the pain or where the pain is, because there's been many studies on this where 88% I think it was, of people out there with no back pain have bulging discs.
Yep.
Everybody does. You have bulging disc. But since we cannot understand where the pain comes from, or we used to, then I need a linear world where there is a cause, a visible cause for everything.
Yeah.
So I'm at B, there's a A. I take a radio, I see bulging disc, there's my A.
Yeah.
It's bad science, but it happens all the time. It's bad science because we did not have our quantum mechanic moment where a guy like Friston comes about and say, but that's not what's happening.
Yeah. So that's how we can turn something like chronic pain into a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Because that's the point of
over.
life.
Yeah.
Is a self-fulfilling prophecy. The point of life is to mitigate surprises. So literally, this is my prediction, and you're going to do everything you can to make the prediction right. Because if it's not right, you have a surprise. Surprise creates free energy, entropy that leads you to death eventually. Yeah. So the body doesn't care about right and wrong. So it doesn't care about good and bad. It cares about no surprises.
And this isn't even and this is almost, it seems to me, separate from a survival or evolution thing. It really is a life versus not alive thing.
Bacterias.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like this is literally life behaves in different ways than things that aren't.
And that's the depth of what Schrödinger was saying. This is the most important concept I've ever read about what Schrödinger said. That's why I was like, how he has not made a ripple, or maybe a ripple in the world. Well, obviously because now there's Friston, but this was the most mind-boggling thing I've ever read in my life. Past Nietzsche, who to me was everything, was that book from Schrödinger, where I was like, you guys don't understand what he's saying. He's saying that life has his own way of doing. And that's what life does. It fights entropy. So, but that means on a quantum mechanical level, anything alive will do everything it can to mitigate surprises. That's how we do. That's how we move forward. Mm-hmm. That's what life is a way to mitigate surprise. So the purpose of life is to fight death.
So we addressed in the chronic pain example where you have a negative reaction to something, right? It's a prediction, it's whatever, but now you know what you're going to be.
Once the prediction is set, now you're in trouble.
There isn't any. You know what's going to happen if you get into that position the next day, right? You just know. So, but what happens when the prediction is wrong? Let's say. Problem is, if I give an example off the top of my head, we're going to be married to it for the rest of the thing. But what's an example that you can think of?
Okay, easiest way. Let's take away from training. Like for example, sexual behavior. Okay. You're sure you don't like something because you saw a movie, a porn movie or whatever, and you thought, oh, I would not like that, because you judged it from a belief perspective, not having done the stuff. But you've been told, parents, friends, or whatever, this is disgusting, I don't do that, right? So you know going into it that you don't like it. You happen to do the stuff or whatever, and suddenly the outcome not the outcome, but what you feel does not match what you knew for sure you were going to feel. That's easier to get in touch with because that happens to everything. It's like, that's not how I thought I would feel. And now you're like, wait, what? That's a surprise. And now basically your system is like has to go against the what and has to marry the two back together. So now once you have a prediction error, this is how I'm going to feel. Well, that's not how I felt. It goes both ways. Whether you like it or not, it's basically the other way. I'm going to love this. Like you think like, I'm in love with that guy. Sex is going to be awesome. Yeah, not always. Not always, right? Or the opposite. Anyway. Now you have a prediction error. There's 3 ways to correct that. There's a balance between the 3, and usually this function happens when it's one over the other 2. Anyway, we're going to get into that. So the first thing is you have to change your prediction. Right? That's the easiest way to do. So I'm on the sled. I'm going to do 100 feet in 12 seconds. All right. I put too much weight on it. It's not going to move.
Yeah, you get 2 seconds in and you're like,
no,
this isn't happening.
This is not going to take 12 seconds because you fucked up on the weight.
Yeah.
Right. So it's the same idea as you thought the sexual position was going to do that, and you're wrong. Wrong prediction. All right. So you have to change your prediction. On that, do you want to do 1, 2, 3?
Let's go back then. So let's just say that on the one from so we're basically where we change the prediction, right? From the training standpoint, it is kind of simple in that like, okay, well now my expectation is very different.
Yes, but exactly. Right? But there's a very important point about that. How you make you have to understand where you make the prediction. This is where your brain comes in. The purpose of the brain is to allow you to make prediction. Right? So there's certain parts of the body that are designed for. There's 3 ways to marry the prediction and then the expression, right? And making the prediction, that's the role of the brain. Like literally, I have a study, if you all want, that I can link about all this. But actually, it seems that that's what the interoception, all that stuff comes in, is the role of the brain is to make the prediction. This is where the test negative that I talk about all the time is about. That's the job of the brain. We thought the job of the brain was basically, again, the neurons are there and they're just passive and then they react to stimulus and then they order the body to do stuff. No. That's not what the brain is for. The brain is to make a prediction, is to decide the environment you're going to be in. So that's what the test negative is. So that means that's also where your sense of self is. So that's basically you're going to make prediction based on who you are, or who you think you are, on your personality. To change your prediction, you need to change who you are. So what do I mean by that? On the sled, I put too much weight. Yeah, because I thought I was the guy capable of pushing that.
You're not that guy.
But you're not that guy. So you're going to have to change your sense of self, because your sense of self is the one deciding the prediction. Why? Because it's in a task negative network, and a task negative network is sense of self, morals. It makes prediction on past and future. It's where any change in the peripheral stimuli. So this is where the task negative network is so important, that we talked about in other podcasts, is that's the one responsible for making the prediction. That's who you are, who you think you are.
Yeah.
Right? So to change a prediction, you need to change who you are. This is why addicts, in order to get away, need to change who they are. John does drugs because John is with his friends. John has an environment there, right? In order to go away from drugs, if he's addicted enough, John has to die and become Mike.
Yeah.
Because Mike won't do drugs. But every time I go back to being John, in that environment, I'll go back to drugs. Yeah. It's environment, behavior, identity, right? Identity is based on is prediction. Prediction is identity.
So let's say on the inverse of that, if I go up and I'm gonna try and deadlift 650 pounds, and I think, all right, I think I can get this. It's gonna be, and then it comes off the floor like it's nothing.
Yep.
Next thing I know, I'm like, well, 7 1/4 is fucking. Now I'm the guy who can do that well. You know what I mean?
But you know why? Because you become a guy who destroys 650.
Yeah. And
so now you want to become the guy who deadlifts 7.
Yeah.
Like that's, like.
So whereas if I were to go into thinking this was going, you go to a lift that you think is going to be very challenging, and it's easy, all of a sudden you're like, I maybe am a bad motherfucker.
Exactly. You know so your sense of self went up.
Yeah.
The same thing where your previous 90% today feels like a fucking 120%.
Yeah. It's like
your
I got a little bit of reality check today.
Your sense of self goes down. So because you are the prediction in that sense.
Yeah.
But neurologically speaking, you are the prediction. That's the problem when you want to do 85% today in training no matter what, is if today for other reasons happen to be heavy, it's going to crash your sense of self because you are the prediction. From a neurological perspective, from a task negative network, you are your prediction. You have to understand that there's different parts of your body. There's different parts of your nervous system. There's different ones. There's the central nervous system. There's the peripheral. There's basically the enteric nervous system. There are different parts of you. The one that makes a prediction, that's the goal of the brain. That's the task negative network, and that's where your sense of self is. So that's why making the wrong prediction can be so damaging to you, because it directly links to your sense of self from a neurological perspective.
Yeah. Because your identity is tied up in the prediction, because that's how you see everything.
Because that's the way it works. Yes. Well, okay. I am not about to judge evolution. 300,000 years to become human. The nervous system has been around for 500 million years. That's how it works. The task negative network is the reason we're on top of the food chain, right? We build things in society. Basically, the one thing we have as humans over every other animal is that we can change our environment better.
Yeah.
So our task negative, our way of making prediction is better than the others. We're better at making predictions. So our sense of self is superior to every other animal because we can change our environment better than other animals. It's environment, behavior, identity. That's what I call the Friston environment. Is basically one when you can, when you decide if you're going to be successful or not. But that's a very important part when we go back to pain, right? Because you have to be successful in making your prediction. So there's a problem with addiction and pain and everything. If you know for a fact that your prediction is deadlift equals back pain, then when deadlift equals back pain, it raises your sense of self. Just like for you, I smoke 650, I feel better. Yeah, every time I hurt myself on deadlift, my sense of self goes up because I was right in my prediction. That's how fucked up it can be, though.
Yeah.
It can work both ways.
Yeah, and then they become even more certain.
But then it goes the other way. That means if deadlift doesn't hurt my back, then who am I? Because I'm wrong in the prediction. That's a surprise, what you're trying to fight against. So that's the power of the prediction. And what happens when there's a prediction error, it's to life, it means literally death. So if you make the wrong prediction, whether the prediction is good or bad doesn't matter. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Is as long as you make a prediction that is right, your body is like awesome.
So we're trying to constantly basically just address everything with certainty, because certainty is order.
Certainty is life.
Yeah, and then as soon as there's something that's a surprise, you're like, that's fucking chaos, and that's why it's there has to be a correction.
There has to be a correction. So that's the key. There are 3 corrections. If you're stuck in one, like changing the prediction, your sense of self is attached to that. That means that every mistake that you make, any surprise that you have in your life,
for better or worse,
diminishes your sense. Well, it's always bad. So any surprise, even if it's a good surprise, it's bad. If it's a bad surprise, it's bad. In the sense of any surprise is bad. If you can there's 3 ways to correct. The first one is changing the prediction. If that's your way to correct errors, then any surprise is bad. Even if the surprise has a good outcome outside, you will still see it as bad. And it gets worse. No matter how good that surprise is, it lessens you as a human being. It makes you feel worse about yourself. That's why in some people that are fucked up, happiness hurts. Because they're happy, that's a surprise.
Yeah.
That surprise makes them feel lesser as human beings, because really, it does. It just destroys their sense of self because it is a surprise, because that is the only way they can deal with a prediction error. That's the problem. And that's when you see a lot of issues with ego and stuff like that, because if you don't have the other ways to deal with prediction error, then everything is a challenge to your sense of self. Any surprise. So anything that feels good when you're sure it doesn't lessens your sense of self. Imagine the hell that you live in. Imagine how scared you would be to walk around knowing that everything that feels good will make you feel like shit as a human being. That is hell. That is literally hell on earth.
Were you raised Catholic or no?
I'm French. My grandfather sure was. My grandfather thinks he raised me Catholic, I can tell you that.
But so we have the changing the prediction is the big one, and that's a big problem, right? So your self is going to, what are your other options?
So the second one is you're going to create movement to basically make the world fit the prediction, right? So that's the one where deadlift hurts my back, right? So I'm going to fuck up the form. Like I deadlift and it feels good. I don't want that. So I can either change the prediction, getting like, well, maybe deadlift doesn't fuck me up, or because I don't like it, I'm going to change my form until I hurt myself. That's self-sabotage.
Yeah.
That's all the time. But again, self-sabotage in itself isn't bad. It's just trying to limit the surprise. So you could basically change the movement into one where you hurt yourself. And then the prediction came true, and that's okay. So that's where also like, I'm going to freak out. So basically you will do movements toward freaking out, which can be mouth breathing, which basically you're gonna act on a prediction to make the world fit it. Like, so the prediction doesn't come true. I can either change my prediction or I can make the world fit the prediction. I can create movement that will make me feel the way I thought I should. So it can go the other way, which means I love to squat. I'm going to change my position until I feel the squat feel good.
Yeah.
Like what is my point? You love to snatch because at one time you snatch and you went, oh, that was awesome. So the way now snatching feels like shit. So you have a choice. You can quit snatching or you can do it until you feel that movement and you go, that one.
And you find that again.
That one.
Yeah.
And you don't know what you did, by the way.
Yeah.
But you know it's that one. That one was true. That's the one. Right? And that's why we talk about technique, about anecdotal evidence, about learning skill. Because that's what learning skill is. It's number 2, it's learning to make something feel the way it should. So that's where mastery of movement comes in. That's where mastery of making espresso come in. Is the action should feel a certain way. Then you start to go through repetition again and again and again and again, because every single repetition gets you a little bit closer to what you think that action should feel like.
Yeah.
And that's where mastery comes in. That's why after a while,
because then eventually you have very precise control.
You have moved your center,
actions,
exactly. And that's why people understand how masters of anything can be so precise in what they do. How can they duplicate and replicate something to almost perfection? How can the guy who makes the soup makes it ever so slightly different, but every time it's great, right? Because he has mastered the movements necessary to duplicate exactly that. So that's why you see the great Olympic weightlifter, where they do a movement that to the untrained eye always looks the same.
Yeah.
It's like, and you go like, oh my God, look at, you can tell the mastery of movement.
Yeah.
Why? Because they can duplicate and replicate the movement almost to the same level every time. It works for them, because that number two, every time there's a prediction error, we didn't feel right, they have learned to adjust to make the bar do what they want.
Well, and as they progress, same thing with like the sport of basketball. If you see someone who's a 3-point shooter,
yep.
I'm not one of those, but when I shoot, still like I would say within 80% of the time the ball leaves my hand, I would know for sure if it's going in or not.
And mastery is Kobe Bryant knew 95% of the time, if not 98.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
then
and he could get to that feeling.
Exactly. And the greatest shooters are 95+% of the time nailed it. That's what the guy turns around.
Yep, you're done.
Stephen Curry, he knows.
Yeah.
So him is at probably 99%, where he knows that when he feels a certain way, he makes it. That's mastery of movement. That's repeated. That's because every single prediction error, he physically
worked out,
changed the world to fit what he wanted.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting.
And that's the power that's mastery right there.
Yeah.
That's anecdotal evidence. That's where we'll talk about this, but that's where I fight for anecdotal evidence so much, is because that's where mastery is. That's where you cannot learn a skill with an anecdotal evidence, because they have a whole thing about anecdotal evidence being useless, and that's completely wrong in the sense of you cannot learn any skill with an anecdotal evidence. So you can't use anecdotal evidence to convince others, but that's not the point. The point is you need to convince yourself first.
Yeah, I mean, I could read all of the studies specifically on how a basketball shot is supposed to look, until you have to get in there and go, and I know what that feels like, and it's like, well, exactly. I think this, I think that, and then it applies to me, anecdotally, but that's what matters to me. That's the only way I'm going to learn the shot.
Exactly, but from a Friston perspective, that is extremely important, because it's one of the three.
Yeah.
So you have to make the correct prediction, which means that's where memorization comes in that sense of this is what a shot is. But at some point, it takes the fucking million shots. Yeah. It takes what is anecdotal evidence of you basically going through prediction errors physically, and many times you're like, oh, I want to quit, because you don't want to go through that basically second way of fixing prediction error. Quitting is I made the wrong prediction, which is shooting, which means I want to play basketball.
Yeah.
So you're going to change your prediction, going like, I don't want to play basketball anymore.
Yeah.
Because you're tired of going through the second solution, which is changing the world every single time until it fits what you want.
Yeah. So third option.
Yeah.
If I have to change the prediction is wrong.
Yeah.
Before we get into the third one, this is what I want to know. Are these choice-based necessarily? Is this a decision to choose which of these three?
It's a balance, but yeah.
I do?
Yes. Well, now the question is who makes the choice, right? It's basically from, you have learned from previous behavior which one is more effective.
Okay.
That's why
So you'll have your go-to.
If you quit long enough, it's obviously effective because you change your prediction every time.
Yeah.
Then it becomes your behavior. So environment to behavior to identity. If you have decided to change your prediction, you create an environment where anything goes hard, you quit. Because that's the environment you created, because that's that's how you change that's how you fix the prediction error, by changing the prediction every time.
Yeah.
So that will be your behavior, which is every time something gets hard, every time there's a surprise.
Yeah.
I change the prediction, that becomes your personality. So you create an environment where things get hard, it's a surprise, yeah? You much rather quit, then you become a quitter.
Yeah.
So it's environment behavior, identity. What you get to choose is the environment.
Okay.
At that stage, you get to decide, I will not, if there's a surprise, I will deal with it and not get away from it. That will affect your behavior. You're not a quitter anymore. But you can't control the behavior. You can't control your identity. That's where people quit but say, I'm not a quitter. No, you don't get to do that.
Yeah.
The only thing you can decide of, you can choose is your environment. Okay. So you get to choose which one of the three or all three you get to use. That's where this comes in, or consciousness, whatever the fuck it is, whatever we have that all other animals don't have. We get to create an environment. Lions are stuck. They're not going to go migrate 300 miles to find, it's basically they have a territory and they're stuck there and there's no food. They might move a little bit, but basically they're fucked. They're not going to build an air conditioning because it's too hot. They're not going to dig a well. So where we can do, us, is we are very good at with the prediction thing, we can create an environment better than anybody else. So that's where I think people need to understand where the success in life is they get to choose the environment. They don't get to choose their behavior. They don't get to choose their identity because that is based on the environment. Yeah. Environment, behavior, identity. So, but you get to choose the behavior. That is the one thing you get to do is you get to go like, this is where I want to be. So you think you're fat, you're out of shape, you're unhappy. You decide to go to the gym. Now, once you're in the gym, you don't get to decide the rest. That's the problem too, is you go to the gym, now you think it's going to feel good. It won't.
No.
And so now basically from that you say, oh, I'm a loser. You're not. It's supposed to feel like shit. You're just wrong in your prediction on how a workout is supposed to be. It's not supposed to feel good. It's supposed to make you better, but it's not supposed to. So after that, it's out of your control. But being in that gym, being a correct gym, will make you train harder, and then eventually you'll become a winner. But you don't get to control that part. All you get to do is choose a gym. So what do I mean by that? You join a gym, but you don't like the mood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right?
The vibe doesn't
The
click.
vibe doesn't fit you. You don't like the people there. They're not supportive to you or whatever. What do you think the best program in the world will do to you in that environment?
Nothing. Yeah.
Absolutely zero. So now you went into that gym, you chose that gym, right? At least you chose to go to a gym. That's the gym you're in. Now what you would like is you would like to change the coaching there. You would like for people to be more supportive and everything. Yeah, but it's not that gym.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You don't get to choose that. And so from there, after that, basically it starts to tax your identity because you're like, people should be like this. So now you bitch about the facts. So now basically you're making a prediction based on and you go like, I can't do this. Yeah, you're right. But because you're trying to control what is not controllable. What is controllable is change the gym until you find one that fits what you want. And once you find a gym that fits what you want, your behavior will be of someone who trains harder because you feed out everything, and from there you become a winner.
Yeah.
So the wrong gym will make you a loser. You don't get to control that.
And then you start to associate different things with different results too.
Once you become a loser, then that's a prediction you make.
Yeah.
So now it's a feedback loop, right? And the prediction is I lose, and now you lose.
Yeah.
And now you're in a bad place. Because you try to control far too down the line. The only thing you can control is the gym. Your gym makes you a loser, fine, change the gym. That's the only thing you can control is your environment.
Yeah. It's interesting, like, so if a regular person walks into a gym and they see some big, thick-necked son of a bitch deadlifting and banging weights, and that guy's an asshole to them, from then on out, that person's going into the gym, seeing any big, strong, it's going to be like, fuck this place, fuck this guy.
That tells you two things, because people ask us all the time, how should I choose my gym? Choose my gym like in jiu-jitsu or whatever. I'm like, get in there, see if you want to go back.
Yeah.
Do you feed off whatever energy is there?
Yeah.
If you do, you'll win. If you don't, you'll lose. And there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to change that asshole banging the weight.
Yeah.
He might change, but that is not under your control. And you telling him he's an asshole most likely won't change him, by the way. But
and on the other side of it, if you go in and there's some big thick-necked son of a bitch deadlifting and banging a bunch of weights, and then he talks to you afterwards, and he's a nice guy, and you're like, oh yeah, that was actually nice. You have no problem. Same situation happens the next time, and you're like, oh, I know that guy.
By the way, that tells you how important you as gym owners are out there, because that means literally you defining the outcome of that person's life by providing an inviting environment or one that is non-inviting. Mm-hmm. That's what, to me, the gym owners, we go back to that conversation we had so many times, are so important. And I think that's their only job, really, is create an environment where the kind of people you want in your gym can thrive.
Yeah.
That's it. If you create an environment, you change the behavior, you change their identity. That's how much power we have in people's lives. So if you want your gym to do better your way, change the environment. Make the environment into something that will create the right behavior, that will create the right identity. That's why I think the gym is the most important place in the world.
Yeah. So our third option. This is actually the one that I walked over it 7 or 8 times and was completely misunderstanding the whole thing. So this one I'm going to need you to kind of guide the thing, and I'm going to ask a lot of questions from this, as in because I don't fully understand this one. This one is basically we have to in order to change or correct a prediction error, we have to change the way the brain samples input.
Yes. So basically, that's the third way you could change the error is you could change how you feel about something.
Okay.
All right. So that's the source of most dysfunction, right? Again, the point is to mitigate surprises. A surprise happens, not good. The fact that surprise happens is always bad. So I need to either change the way what I think about, make the prediction, right? Or move the thing until it does what I want in the feeling sense, or I change the way I feel about it. That could be, that's where you see in a life-changing event like a near-death experience, where basically they used to have a certain personality and everything. They used to feel a certain way about
these things that used to be important to them no longer are.
No longer are, because they have changed the way they perceive the world, right? Because that's what happens through endorphin, anyway, all that stuff. So that would be the source of dysfunction. This would be like the source of schizophrenia or stuff like that, where something happens and basically I'm the son of Jesus Christ, right? I was proven that no, you're not. Right? Doesn't matter. You're not going to change the prediction. Now you can't make the world.
The world's not going to get on board with that all of a sudden.
Exactly. Yeah. And you can't walk on water. You can't change the world in a way that proves
your prediction to be right.
And so what you're going to do, the only thing you can do is change that basically how you feel about things. That's where you could see schizophrenia coming in basically. So you have changed the expression. So that would be the source of most dysfunction. Like you create, so psychosomatic events.
Yes.
That would be that, for example. So the deadlift is going to hurt my back. I lift, no it didn't. My form, I can't manage my form hasn't changed, right? So I did not physically hurt myself,
there's
but
no
yet
aggravation.
Nothing. Yet I wake up the next morning and I'm in pain.
Yeah.
Because I made the prediction fit. For example, that's one example, but there's many. But that's where psychosomatic events would apply. Is you have made yourself feel a certain way about that. So there's a positive as well. Let's go back to our sexual behavior.
Yeah.
There is that action that I thought I would hate. But then basically there's a surprise that tells me that this was not bad. It can be because I never wanted to do this because this is morally bad. But the men I love or the women I love likes that action in bed. All right, so I have 2 chances. I can change the prediction. I can basically not do it or whatever, or I can suddenly, the next time I do it, I can make myself like it.
Yeah.
I can change the way I feel about that. That's what the psychosomatic stuff happens so much. We see it with placebo stuff all the time. We see it all the time. But that's also, unfortunately, the source of many dysfunctions.
Okay.
Because that's where also chronic pain is I am so sure that something hurts me that it actually does. So this is people getting really good wusses, going like, oh my God, my finger hurts so bad. They're not kidding. They have trained themselves into feeling pain of anything, even though you could say, oh, I poked you, even if it's not true, and they would actually feel pain.
Yeah.
That's the source of many, many dysfunctions.
What I'm trying to come up with some other. So for this third one, because this is the one that needs the most clarification.
The easiest way to do this.
This is the thing that I think we fall into a lot with food. You had mentioned.
Yes. All right. So easiest way to, let's say I want to go sympathetic.
Yeah.
I enter a situation where I know I need to move. Right. I'm bored.
Yeah.
Right. I'm sitting here. I'm at my desk, and I'm feeling bored. Bored basically is a need of it's a change of behavior, right? I need to do something, and I'm angry, so I need to fucking express the anger, right? So not changing the prediction, because in that case you're bored. That means you feel you need to do something. So either you start enjoying what you're doing, you're at work and you don't want to do that. So second, you need to go sympathetic, but you don't do that either. Sympathetic can be mouth breathing, or basically you need option number 3, which is I need to feel sympathetic.
Yeah.
So instead of acting, I could go grab nuts, something that would, any food, honey, sugar, that will create a sympathetic reaction, because now I'm at work, and instead of changing my prediction, instead of making me like changing my work into something I would like, all I need to do now, that's option number 3, is to create a sympathetic feeling. And the easiest way to do that is to have sugar, because sugar triggers a sympathetic reaction. So now imagine how fucked up that would be if any time I need to have a sympathetic reaction, I could just feel sympathetic. That means that anytime I need to take action, I could instead rely on something that makes me feel sympathetic. That would basically be the third way to deal with a prediction error. So imagine if I put all my energy into option number 3. Everything I have, so it's a triangle, but instead I'm going to use number 3, which means anytime there's a prediction error, I'm going to use something that makes me feel a certain way. So imagine if we could do that with food. Anytime I need to go sympathetic, anytime I need to basically make the world fit what I want and everything, instead, I'm going to grab sugar that makes me feel sympathetic and therefore allows me to fix the prediction error. Imagine the power that would have. And that's our relationship with food. So we are using food as a third option to basically not have to do shit. So that means that we are using food not to change a prediction, even when we're wrong, and not to do anything about it. That is how bad our relationship with food is. Unfortunately, neurologically speaking, it allows us to not do shit.
Well, and I had a note here even from the thing I had read earlier, was he said that basically both your perception is completely bound to action. There's no there is no way around it. Like if I want to change my perception of the world, there has to be action. I have to breathe different. I have to move around. My eyes need to move for me to see something different. I have to breathe in order to smell something. There has to be an actual action in order for us to in order for your perception to change at all.
And so eating becomes the easiest way to fix a prediction error. Why? Because 5,000 years ago, you did not have access to all those different foods. You didn't. You had basically one type of carbs, right? 3 types of protein, and that was it. So because there was so little choices of food, there had to be so much more behavior changes. Behavior changes being the change of prediction or the making the world fit it. So now that we have the quantity of food we desire and choices of food we never had before, it's basically limiting completely the need for a change of behavior or a need for movement. So all choices of food literally determines how much movement and prediction we're going to do in life.
Well, we have at our disposal such a wide variety of foods.
Which is the worst thing we can do to human beings.
An extreme wide variety of things that taste really fucking good.
And quantity.
And so it's always new and novel if you want it.
So you're bored, new food.
I can go have myself a new experience.
Or the food that created that feeling that one time.
Exactly. And so that's the thing, is I think you're either, in most cases, you have the ability to really, you can just replace a lot of necessary things with still there's enough variety so you're not stuck in this.
No, but look how bad it is. That means that I make the wrong prediction, which means I like assholes. You know, like the girl who's always dating that asshole and everything. So
like, oh, I thought he was good. He's a dick.
Like the guy, like the 10 guys before you, or you dating that bitch and everything. Yeah, well, guess what? The other 10, they were exactly the same way, right? It works just as well for women or men, by the way. Instead of changing the prediction, which means realizing that your sense of self, that you're wrong into who you want to date, basically, like your personality is in the wrong place. You're dating people that are destructive to you, your personality is in the wrong place. Instead of changing that, instead of actually trying to date a good guy, all you got to do is eat a specific type of food, and you will have mitigated the prediction error.
Yeah.
Oh.
And because in the grand scheme of things, food is still very short term, that becomes a lot of constant behavior.
So you will need the quantities and you will need the different kind, and we have both.
And then we get into the kind of the patterning as a result of this.
So basically, you can see the connection between food and mental illness. You can see food as a mental illness. Yeah. And I do believe that's what it is now. Food, because of the quantities and the choices we have, is what's stopping you from moving forward in life. And that's why depression and food, we see that through the enteric nervous system. There is a link between the gut flora through the afferent nervous system, the enteric nervous system going into it. There's a link between the gut flora and depression, because those choices in food will have a direct impact on your behavior, whether it is making the world fit what you want or changing your prediction. So imagine how bad our relationship in the Western world is with food.
Yeah.
So that means that in order to, I know a few people basically that are stuck in life because they can't change their behavior and they can't do shit. They can't find their hammies, they can't exercise the way they want, they can't find intensity because they cannot move to make the world fit what they want, or they can't change the prediction, which is they're stuck in life because to change the prediction error, they go toward food.
Yeah.
This is the biggest drug and the most dangerous one of all, because this is the one that will ruin your life.
And it's interesting, and back to kind of the first way to correct the prediction too, is a lot of those people aren't willing to change their sense of self either, because they, you know what I mean? So then you end up with another good option, and then they're still in the middle of this self-destructive, or at least not self-serving.
But that's what basically drugs are, by the way. Drugs make you feel a certain way, right? So that's the source of dysfunction. That's option number 3. Yeah. This is the same thing with drugs, because I'm in my life is bad, right? I don't do shit about it, but I feel good.
Yeah.
I'll mitigate the error.
And often in the case with drugs is even though you don't feel good, it still is familiar. You know what I mean? So it's like, even though it's amidst all of this mess, it's like, no.
It's the right prediction.
I know what I'm getting.
There is no surprises when you're on drugs. Yeah. Everything feels a certain way. Yeah. So that's why drugs are so powerful. But people have to understand, food is exactly the same. The difference is you don't have to snort cocaine, but you have to eat.
You got to eat. And that was always the thing that I thought was interesting with, like habitual overeating and things like that. People with eating disorders that was the thing they always mentioned, was it's like, but you don't have to snort something or
drink
inject
whiskey
something every day, but I got to eat some food at some point. So it's like you're always having to be in the environment with which you can fall off.
But it also means that there's a direct correlation between how many choices of food you have versus how many behaviors you can take. Yeah. The more choices of food you have, the less behavior changes you will have.
Yeah.
You will either choose new foods over new behavior. So if you want to do stuff in life, if you want to change prediction, you're going to have to lower the quantity and choices of food that you have. So the most boring in that sense your diet is, the better your life will be. That's literally. So on a nutrition perspective, that means that you have breakfast. Basically, that's where you see that a lot with Stanley vertical diet, is you want you want to be able to behave the way you want, you want to be able to train the way you want to be who you want to be. Then that means that, especially the StrongFit way, means breakfast is going to be a certain kind of fat that does good to you, whatever that is.
Yeah.
Lunch could be a certain type of carb that does good to you from its rice. And nighttime is going to be a certain kind of protein that does you good, right? Yeah. And you do that, and basically the same choices day in, day out will allow you to have better actions in your life, better decision making, that's a prediction, and better actions toward your life. You are using food to avoid better decision making and better actions. That's literally how we use food. It is that fucked up.
I think that's a great conclusion.
But that's basically the Friston, that's the conclusion. That's the direct conclusion of Karl Friston's work. That's why I created the StrongFit nutrition protocol, is to fit Karl Friston's and Schrodinger's work. That's causality versus finality. But people have to understand the deep relationship between food and behavior.
Yeah.
And even from a neurological perspective, then we go into the gut flora, which is another one on top of that. Food and behavior are linked far more than people understand. And it is, I believe, in the Western world, the most destructive force. You do not understand what that cheat day on the weekend does to you on a neurological level. Like this, and I'm not saying to go cold turkey like this, but you have to understand that what you eat will change your behavior and decision making in life, and not from a chemical perspective, from a Friston perspective. Yeah. That's the problem. Is most people look at it
we
with
only
a chemical.
We only look at food via chemistry anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so they go like, well, who's to say protein does that? It's like, that's not the point.
That's even how I see like eating dysfunction addressed. Is it's brought in as well, you see, so you eat this because then you get this feeling of happy, and it's this and chemical
this and
that
this
chemical.
And that much chemical, that much sugar does insulin this and insulin that and everything. That's a Newton's way of looking at the world. That's a linear way of looking at the world, where it doesn't work like that. The world is quantum mechanical first. The work is, neurologically speaking, you follow the Friston model.
All those other things fall in line just to make sure that correcting prediction errors happens.
Yeah, that's the option number two. Also, like making the world fit, to make the world, that's where the chemistry comes in, right? But it's a what, it's not a why. It's a how, not a why, right? What matters is the why, and the why is the Friston model. And so that's why many times your diet fucks you up, or different diet creates certain results, because fundamentally though, it's the same principle every time. It's the Friston environment. That's what matters.
Now, to go forward, this is not the format for us to give out any like good follow-up reading information for Friston's work, but I will add.
Google him.
I will add. Actually, I have one, there's one really good, concise. I won't say good for layman, but it's a good description of who he is, his background, and a good overview of some of the work. And I'll add that into our link on our Instagram stuff.
And add the free energy in the brain.
Yes.
Like the 207 PDF.
Yep.
Add that one, please, because it's a good one.
So
if they want more, I can always.
Yeah. So I'll put together a couple of those on our link tree and stuff. So if you guys want to take a little bit of a dive into it, you can. So.
But just to finish your list, this is why I believe what we do is so important, because people have no idea how arrogant I am. Like they think I'm trying to, they think I know for sure that the diet is gonna help sleep and get for me leaner or stuff like that. And then, so they're all getting pissed at me, but you have no idea how far I think I can take. I'm so much more arrogant than this. I believe through movement and nutrition, we can have the control of 2 and 3. And so I believe we can go at mental illness. I believe we can go at addiction. I believe we can do through that. We can control so much. Most of this field called psychoneurobiology, that goes into, in a way, the Friston model, even though they're not talking about it, which means for whatever reason, maybe they don't want to quote him, but it's obviously...
It seems to be the foundational basis for
it's so obvious.
All of it. Yeah.
Just Google psychoneurobiology. It's obviously part of the Friston model. But anyway, they're going at it through words, through psychotherapy, like the Freud way. That's the task negative, that's the changing the prediction. That's the option number 1. They are not going into 2 or 3, which is very strange to me. And I think with StrongFit, that's what we can do.
Well, and that's interesting. You had mentioned, it was really interesting how you had kind of gone through some of this stuff too with StrongFit, even without maybe having this framework in front of you to define it as. The first thing was going to be to change the prediction, which is going to be basically intensity.
Yeah, So in a way, I've been doing this forever. This is why the more I delve into this, the more I was amazed how right I was. I was amazed at the power of all this. Like, for example, if you look at changing the prediction, that's, so as I was saying, it's changing who you are, your personality, right? That's burn the questions. It's, you think it's going to do that, well, we're going to go past that. We're going to change your prediction, and to do that, I'm going to burn your sense of self. I'm going to give you a new personality. Right? So burn your soul until, burn who you are, all that stuff. That was exactly that. It was changing the prediction. That's exactly what burn the question was.
That's the thing we've talked many times. You need to become the person who can do this, and here's how you do it.
Become the person who can take that sled and over there, and that is the choice. You create that you get to choose. That environment, you get to choose the environment. So for me, it was the harness where I chose the environment in which I could change me.
Yeah. And the second is then, just like here,
it's movement, it's mastery of movement.
Movement quality, being deliberate, being, you know what I mean? All of that stuff is...
And number 3 is the nutrition, is to stop using that we are developing mental illness with the food thing. I truly believe that. And all the stuff I've read about the gut flora shows me the same. The behavior, the Western world is basically, I think that's where the anxiety, the depression comes from, is we are creating the wrong behavior. And food is a major one into that. So in a weird way, that's what StrongFit has always been about, is to basically give control of option 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
Is to give you the capacity to do all of 3, to give you the capacity to not create free energy, to capacity to be alive.
Now, for you having had these as principles, maybe not worded in this way or framed within these concepts,
idea,
right?
Yes. I knew, but I had no idea.
I just want to know. I want to know, what is it like when you're having to read something from a pretty brilliant guy, and all of a sudden it lines up, and you're like, oh fuck yeah, that's basically what I've been doing. Is that?
Yeah, and it's like what because I read this stuff and I'm like, hey, that's my life.
Yeah.
So I am not crazy. No, but it's the vindication of everything I've ever worked on. It's not even a vindication, because I never felt I had to be vindicated, because I knew I was right. I always know when I'm right. But there is the physical proof of my life's work, goal, dreams, whatever you want to call it. There's a guy who quantified it in a scientific way, showing everything you always worked on is quantifiable in that sense. He has mathematical stuff and everything. It's like, all the stuff you'll be working on has a neurological basis. You just felt it.
Yeah.
To read that on paper in front of you, it's like the guy talks to you directly.
Yeah.
Like, it's when you read those books and you feel like the author is talking to you. Yeah. Reading at Friston stuff, I was like, thank you.
Yeah. And you were never chasing the math either.
Never.
Like, that was never like,
I didn't know there was.
You just wanted to understand it.
I didn't know there was a math. When I read Schrödinger, I was like, oh my God, this is mind-blowing, because I knew this. But then the guy is telling me, no, quantum mechanically speaking, that's what happens. I was like, I knew it. And then I read Friston and I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
But then also they're giving me a roadmap on how to do it now, because I felt the stuff and I knew a lot of it, how to do it on myself, not even all of it, but I was like, those are things I could feel, except I was like, I don't know how to do it. And then there's a roadmap into everything that is doing. There's how we save mankind.
And I think
it's there.
And it's important because you still think differently and operate differently than most of us.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Which means you never gave a fuck either way if there was 1,000 research papers published on this subject or anything. It didn't matter to you at all.
No, because I knew sooner or later.
Yeah. But it is good to see, like even for me, like going through the few new notes from we had today on Friston stuff, my understanding of, other than just the real basics now, my understanding is much broader, simply because I found different words to attach it to.
Which is very necessary.
Which it has to be at this point.
Otherwise you're not getting it.
Yeah.
But
and so you're trying to communicate your feeling all this time on it, and now that's I think the important part of having kind of discovered that this work has been going on, is that now there's an easier way to teach this to people.
Yeah, because I thought my only recourse for the longest time was philosophy.
Yeah.
Logical evidence. That's the only way I could ever explain what I was feeling. Like, guys, I know I'm right, but let me take you through philosophy to prove it.
Explain to you why. And
now
exactly.
You kind of put because I can, if I'm good at something, I can see patterns. So I saw patterns because I read everything, from paleontology to philosophy to history to stuff like that. So I saw the patterns. I was like, but I needed Plato and Socrates to help me explain it to people. Whereas no, there's a dude, he's that smart. He actually figured it out.
Yeah.
As a neuroscientist, he figured out how the shit works. This is his mankind's. And I don't hate me, but screw Jesus Christ. He's a savior.
This was the really interesting thing that I had circled this here on my thing. He had said, basically, if he was to define his work, right? And it was like, he's trying to organize the principles of all life and intelligence. And the quote that is left here is, if you are alive at all, if you have life, what behaviors then must you show? And that's where all of this is coming into.
Exactly.
Like life behaves in this way.
Okay, so the guy has mapped out life. That's literally what he's done. And he's telling us there is a way to live, because everybody has an opinion.
Yeah.
Oh, life does. No. It seems that life has guidelines. Just like physics has the wave equation, like Schrödinger has the wave equation to define the behavior of particles, Friston defined the behavior of life. And he's telling us in order to go toward more life, this is how you behave. So it's not a matter of opinion anymore in the sense of that I live my life the way I want. No, you live your death the way you want.
And to
in most cases.
And to tie it back to learning, what's really interesting is the fact that, I'm trying to think of how to put this. This is one, I knew I was going to have a couple of these moments on this podcast. Where
it is Karl Friston. No one understands him, right? So it's all good.
But when we get into learning in general, right? The first phase is memorization anyways. That's and normal. So a lot of these people, and me included, is the concept of prediction errors, the prophecy model, and now on how minimizing prediction errors and correcting them is done. Now that you know that, now you can go about your day and you can kind of see where things are. You're in that memorization phase now.
Yes, and you can understand that it's not all here. That at some point, it's going to have to be your movement.
Yeah, and then once you understand it, then you can now live in it.
But that's why, as a musician, at some point you're going to have to feel the music.
Exactly.
So it's not enough to know the notes. At some point, you're going to have to feel the notes. That's changing how you feel about something, the sensory input. It's not enough to go ding, 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 ding. No, it has to feel a certain way. So now you're going to do ding, 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 ding. So you have 1, 2, and 3, right? You know that the prediction isn't good enough because it still surprises. So then there's a mechanic, but then after you're going to move mechanically differently to make a better note, and then you're going to move based on how the note feels.
And
now you're like ding, 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 ding,
and that's
ding,
when
ding,
there's
ding,
actually
ding, ding,
then expression in playing music, and that's the reason you play music.
Exactly. And now you're mastering it because you have all three going. Every time you need to change the prediction slightly because it's not what you thought. Then you make your fingers move a certain way, and then you make the note feel a certain way. And now you have music. Now you have art, which is the foundation of who humans are. So that's what art is. Art is life, because art is all three. Art is a way to minimize surprises. That's why beautiful music, we know what it is, because it is literally an expression of life.
I think eventually we'll do a podcast on that subject at some point, because that's something I've been very interested in as of late, as trying to just learn in a vacuum without risk. If we try to do all our learning when the stakes are higher, like training, that's a tough game. It's good to learn how to learn.
But that's very important, because then we can go into anecdotal versus logical versus empirical evidence. Because if you look, people now, the trainers all try to learn through empirical evidence, which means they want to read something that makes them change the prediction, but without having to make the world fit, so without having to do anything with it or how they feel about it. So it's the laziest way to learn. You can't learn just through empirical evidence. You don't learn shit. It's thinking that you're going to do scrambled eggs the Gordon Ramsay way because you read the...
That's learning how other people do things.
But you still haven't learned how he did it. Just because you read about Gordon Ramsay's life and you read his recipe doesn't mean you can do the scrambled eggs the way he did it. That's the problem. That's what they want. It's like, but just tell me how you did it. But it doesn't matter, because that's not how you're going to do it, because that's not how this works. So you think changing the prediction gives you control of life, where you are so mistaken. It is only one way, and it's a dysfunction. Anytime you don't use all three, you are being dysfunctional. So whenever you think empirical evidence will give you truth, all you're doing basically is to be morally superior to everybody else. You're in your ivory tower where you think you can bring the truth to everybody, like you're Moses on Mount Sinai, basically, because you want an easy way to mitigate surprises, which are actually, there's the other two that you need to go to put yourself through. You'll see that most dysfunction resides in people relying on one way to change, to mitigate surprises. Either they change a prediction, which means either they quit on everything, or they want everything without actually having to work, or they just use movement, but then keep the same behavior going, the fucked up behavior, but just keep acting on it, trying to fix it without even realizing where they fuck up in the first place, right? Or they basically have dysfunction of trying to change the way they feel. Drugs, food, mental illness, anxiety, all that stuff. That's what dysfunction is when you do one option over the others.
I think we just summed up all of Karl Friston's work in like an hour and 20 minutes.
Well, you wish.
I mean,
but yeah, no, I hope so.
By all, I mean the 2 paragraphs of his stuff that I had to reference today.
Yeah, but that's where we talk a lot about it in that online the nervous system workshop that we're going to release in a week or two. By the time we get out, we should release it. Yeah. This is the base of everything I do. Mm-hmm. But now I have the neurological understanding of it. So this is where StrongFit is going. It's going into behavior modification. Mm-hmm. It's going toward how to be alive, I guess. Yeah. But the progress I've made on myself, because that's why basically I keep getting leaner, because I apply basically that to nutrition, and the effects are ridiculous. So now I'm playing pool so much better because I'm applying that when I play pool. I understand where my dysfunctions were before, so that's where OCD is. Mm-hmm. OCD is option 2. Make the world fit, right? So you're like, no, I need my hand here, because I think the only way to mitigate surprises is to do something physical about it. That's OCD for you.
You mean when I'm not sure whether or not I started the cameras and I have, no matter, I went up and looked it right in the face and turned them on. 5 minutes later, I still have to ask Tyler to go look just do me a favor.
Yeah, because you know why? Because you don't want the surprise of fucking up.
Yeah.
Right. But so you need a little bit of option number 3, which would be like, dude, relax. It's all good. You know you have it.
I've only done it once. It was only 1 camera.
Exactly.
I don't think anyone even complained on YouTube.
So, but you need a change of prediction in order to not make the same mistake again, right? Yeah. So you see, it's those 3 constantly in balance. That's where you make progress. So I've been applying that to pool. It's ridiculous. Like this morning, I had a really good session based on that alone.
Wow.
Yeah, it was wild.
So now the fun stuff.
Yep.
All right. So that's going to have us wrapped up for this week, I think. So you guys follow StrongFit1 on Instagram. Mm-hmm. You can follow me at Tyler F. and Stone on Instagram. StrongFitEquipment.com. That's where we have all the sandbags, apparel,
T-shirts.
Come on. Are you wearing one? I'm not even wearing one either. So we'll have to start wearing
because we have more cool T-shirts coming. So yeah.
So we've got, but also now we do have StrongFitEquipment.eu.
Yep.
So for Europe, we have sandbags, some limited apparel there. We'll get more stuff in there at time, but that's the stuff that's coming directly out of this office here. So
exactly. So it's the shipping is better. Let's put it this way for you.
Yes. So
we have the StrongFit community.
And StrongFit
that's very important.
On Facebook.
By the way, I heard a lot of people saying they heard about it through the podcast, so we have to mention it. Yeah.
Good. That's actually probably my favorite forum. We have some private stuff here and there, but that group is nice because that's people who have seen some stuff and are excited enough to get in. We're not yelling to a room full of people who don't give a shit. So it's a lot of like-minded people. It's a really good dialogue in there.
We're going to release the auto-regulation nutrition group number 2 is starting on April 1st.
Yeah.
And then we, just so we can tell people, we're starting in the auto-regulation training group on May 1st. So in the next podcast, I'll explain what that is.
Yeah. Let's see, we got the training group, nervous system the online nervous system workshop. Did we
announce that? We're going to release that in a week or 2 as well.
Yeah, okay. I think we talked about
So by the next podcast, we can start by talking about the training.
Perfect.
Because that kind of fits, because we need to talk about intent.
Yeah, I like it.
When it comes to training. Yeah.
So that's next week?
By
next week, we mean like tomorrow for us.
Yeah, tomorrow, but so I'll have a different t-shirt and I'll fake it like it's next week. Yeah.
I'll shower, I promise. All right.
Bye, everybody.
That'll do it. Good. You need something to drink?